Hi, Terry Fairchild, Registered Corporate Coach and Authorized Partner for PXT Select. And did you know that every time you move performance from average to superior, you have a measurable financial impact? And that's the topic of this video is how can you as a manager coach your employees to higher levels of performance? How can you take those average producers and through your coaching and direction, move them towards the level of superior producer? So our objectives in this video are to understand how thinking style relates to training and onboarding new employees. We're going to use behavioral traits to coach employees to higher levels of performance, and we're going to factor occupational interest in with job assignments and special projects so that we keep our employees motivated. So if you are using PXT Select, you have used the comprehensive selection guide for the selection of your new employee. Now in this case, this is a sample report for Oliver Chase. And so just a quick review, as we were evaluating whether we would hire Oliver, we looked at the first area, which is thinking style, and we said, can Oliver meet the mental demands of this job? Can Oliver do this job? And you'll notice in the shading area, he is a 79% fit in the area of the thinking style. And then you evaluated how will Oliver do the job? And you said, how does his behavioral traits line up with those of the position? And he's a 59% match. And then finally, does Oliver want to do this job? And so how does Oliver's interests compare to the interests of the position or someone who's had success in this role? So we're going to assume for the purposes of this video that you've made a decision to hire Oliver, and we're going to look through and say, now how could we coach Oliver to that higher level of performance? So when we look through this coaching report, we're going to really divide this up into three areas. And so when we consider thinking style, we're really looking at how do we want to onboard and train Oliver so that he is ramped up into this position. We're going to look through the behavioral traits because they're going to give us the language and the information that we need to manage and lead Oliver. And finally, we're going to look at those interest areas to see how can we create an environment where Oliver is going to feel motivated to come in and give his best work every day. So the coaching report is one person and one position. And it's personalized. The narrative feedback is written to the manager, to you, the manager, and the scores are on all scales. And again, it's against a performance model, and that performance model is based upon someone who's had success in this role. So it's based on a high performer in the role that Oliver is starting in. So if you were Oliver's manager, the first thing that you might look at is that Oliver scored a composite score of 8. And so if we kind of review the statistical bell curve, most learners are going to be between 4 and 7. And so as you roll out training, if someone's in that 4 to 7 range, you're going to, they're going to learn at an average pace, just about the common learner. So Oliver is higher than that. He's in the 8, 9, and 10 category. And so what that says about Oliver is that you're going to want to challenge him, that training is going to need to be fast-paced. It's going to need to be done at a fairly quick clip. Otherwise, Oliver is going to get bored with the training and with the position. So when we look at our high scores better, not necessarily, because if you as a manager do not challenge Oliver, he may get bored. He may, find other things to do. He may find trouble. So we definitely want to keep him engaged. And so that's going to require that you make sure that you're ramping up and rolling out that training at probably a higher than normal level for Oliver. Now, the other spectrum is that if you were training someone in the 1, 2, and 3 area, then you're definitely going to want to, it's not that that person can't learn, it's that they learn in smaller bits. So people like Oliver are can process lots of information very quickly. People in the 1, 2, and 3 areas, they're going to need repetition, hands-on learning, and smaller pieces of training. And so if you were delivering that training to someone in the 1, 2, 3 category, you'd probably want to break that training up in smaller pieces over time. Whereas with Oliver, you're going to want to bring on that training probably in a pretty fairly quick method. So let's look at what the coaching report offers in terms of some training suggestions for Oliver. It says what you need to know about Oliver. He's an effective learner who may appreciate a challenge while training on new tasks. He solves problems effectively, considering solutions from many different perspectives. Without challenge in a training program, you may lose his full attention. His capacity to adapt to various training situations is very strong. Oliver learns easily and can apply that learning to the requirements of a new job situation. So, some management tips for Oliver. Keep his workload and training opportunities challenging enough so that he doesn't get bored and lose interest. Invite Oliver to apply his problem solving skills to challenges within the department or organization. And if others need more time to learn a shared task, provide Oliver with additional meaningful work to keep him engaged. And again, I really like these bottom line comments. Oliver is highly responsive to training at many levels of complexity. The next area of the coaching report is on behavioral traits. And you'll notice here that Oliver is a 59% match on behavioral traits. So this represents time on your part as a manager. Again, the higher percentage match in all the areas, the less time you may have to commit to managing and leading. So as we look at behavioral traits, there's a continuum. And where Oliver's initials fall on the continuum is really where his comfort zone is. So it doesn't mean that Oliver can't be steady in terms of pace. It just means that if he is more steady, he has to exert more energy. He has to leave his comfort zone and he has to adapt from where his normal set point is. And so where the initials fall, when they fall within that green area, that means as a performer in this role, that role is going to require someone in that range. And so he's naturally lined up. His innate behavioral traits are going to be such that that's going to be very comfortable for him. In the area of assertiveness, he is going to be more forceful. And in this role, people who are more unassuming have had more success in this role. And so what it might mean for you as a coach is that you're going to have to coach Oliver to be a little bit more unassuming at times versus forceful. And again, if you look through the continuum, the areas that might jump out where you might see Oliver's behaviors being different than what a high performer might be in this role are in the areas of decisiveness, accommodation, and in judgment. And again, the further they are away from it, the further Oliver is away from the shaded area, the more you're going to notice those behaviors. So let's look at the report and what can you do as Oliver's manager to help him to higher levels of success. So what you need to know about Oliver is that he tends to be motivated by situations in which he is held accountable for results. He is willing to be assertive, to be more of a leader than a follower. Oliver typically uses direct statements. He will likely present his position with a fair amount of confidence, and at times seem to be overly assertive when giving direction to others. So, management tips for you. Provide positive feedback when he engages in active listening rather than pushing forth with his agenda. If you notice that he is too dominating in situations, provide feedback suggesting that he allow others more opportunity to offer input. And give him opportunities to lead discussions if he appears to have a desire to do so. So again, Oliver is going to always want to lead more than follow. And so that report tells you that maybe if there's opportunities for leadership, that would be great. But when Oliver needs to be less of a leader and more of a follower, you may have to be more directive in your approach with him. So the bottom line is he takes on leadership roles comfortably, but is still willing to follow direction from someone else when necessary. So you as a manager are going to have this page for every single area of the coaching report. And so when you notice those areas where his behavior is outside of what a top producer would have, that's going to be an opportunity for you to look in this report and look for some of those tips and then build that communication with Oliver so that he is in line with the behaviors and the expectations of this position. And again, the closer you hire to these behaviors in the first place, the less time you're going to have to spend actively engaging in this coaching. So if you do that, you're more likely to have that superior producer. But in some cases, maybe Oliver had some qualities that you really liked on the resume and the interview. And so it's really worth you spending the time to do the coaching and that behavioral coaching. So again, every situation is different, and this is some great information to help give feedback and build that relationship with Oliver. And then finally, the third area of the coaching report involves occupational interests. And you can see here that a top performer in this role has the occupational interest of enterprising, people service, and financial admin. Oliver's interests are technical, creative, and then he's tied for two of the top interests, financial admin and enterprising. And so if I were Oliver's manager, I might choose to help him use those interests when it was appropriate. So say you had a project that the whole department was working on, or your team was responsible for a project, and there were some technical aspects of that project that needed to be delegated out. Oliver would be the top candidate to delegate those technical activities to because they would motivate him to want to participate because he's already interested in that. Same could go for creative. If you're doing brainstorming, Oliver's likely to really be highly engaged in that because he's going to like that creative aspect of problem solving and really like the fact that you're inviting him in to help solve problems. Then that, coupled with his problem solving abilities, might make him a really strong performer in terms of group projects where he could help solve problems and then become involved in maybe either technical or creative aspects that aren't a part of his regular role. But again, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that in his role, enterprising people and financial admin are the top interests of someone who performs at a high level. So again, you'd want to balance offering those opportunities with, his primary responsibility being interested in those activities. So I would encourage you to spend some time with the coaching report. And in summary, use the thinking style information for training and onboarding. Use the behavioral traits to provide communication and feedback in terms of the behaviors that you would expect in this position. And then use occupational interest to create an environment where your employees are going to want to come in and give their best work every day.